I was going to ask a question.
Go ahead.
So, like, do you think that if we were to redefine critical race theory, kind of how you're talking about it, do you think it's still something that should be taught to? Do you think kids in elementary school are mature enough to understand this still, or
Yeah,
do you
well,
think it's like a?
Yeah, well, here, okay, I'm gonna teach something. I'm gonna do a quick lesson in the origin of the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you, at the end of it, you tell me, if you had kids, you tell me at what age you would want them to hear what the story that I am telling. Okay, so this will be really awesome. One thing that's really notable about, first off, the United States is an amazing place. You can talk about the U.S. as being like, it's like all the slavery and the genocide and the this and the that. It's like, look, man, I study these issues globally all over the world. The United States isn't it for all the bad that has happened here, and I'm going to talk about some of it in a second. This is the most amazing experiment in human social relations. The fact that this country exists, continues to exist, that we've had a mostly peaceful turnover of power every 4 years, and that we've only had one civil war is unbelievable. That doesn't negate all the negative, the genocide, and the slavery that was just like really unknown at this certain stage in human history, lots of different things. But it's really amazing, right? So now, but let's look at what got created here. This was the first system, major system, a government, a social system that was built around the stratification of people on the basis of biological characteristics. That people on their way to the Americas, first off, they came here to the Americas, this land was populated, there were people living here all through the Americas. Over the course of time, what was essentially a genocide happened of the indigenous peoples living here, right? I mean, you can only call it a genocide. Some of it was deliberate, some of it was not deliberate, but the point was, it's like, get off the land because now this is going to be our land, and we've decided we can't live with you because we've created a story in our minds that you are barbarians and you are less than human, and therefore, to all the American Indians here, we're not going to live with you. That on the way they had this idea that, hey, we're going to go to Africa, we're going to get groups of people, and we're going to bring them here to this new land, we're going to own them, we're going to force them to work for us, and we're going to do it on the basis of their physical characteristics, and we're going to build a stratification system only on the basis of those physical characteristics. Slavery's been a part of the world forever. There are more slaves in the world today than at any point in human history. Slaves are cheaper than at any point in human history. There's 30 to 40 million slaves in the world today. The treatment is just ungodly, unbearable, right? It's always been, but this was the first time that somebody built a system around in the way that they did. And they put it in place, and they stratified it, and they built an entire binding legal structure around slavery and how to treat indigenous peoples who were already here. It's like, whoa. When you do that, so now I'm thinking as a sociologist, right? When you do that, you've now created a system that is going to influence human behavior forever. Forever. You don't just snap your fingers one day and say, as we did, mostly in, so let's say 1865 or whatever, right? If we want to use that as the date. But you don't just snap your fingers and one day the people who were less than human are suddenly human. It doesn't happen that way. So given that, and so this is my question to you, that's part of the story of the United States. That's part of so-called critical race theory, part of the sociology of understanding groups and how that happened and how that has continued to impact us right up to today. How could it not? You can't have 350 years of that and have it not still be part of this system. Like, we've come so far. We have come so far, and yet we are still impacted by all of this stuff. Now, what age would you want your kid to start hearing that story of the United States? The one that's really cool, This amazing country, like, oh my God, how well we actually get along, because we really do. It's all relative, but we really do. And how much we're continuing to be influenced by our past. When would you want your kid to start learning that?
I mean, if they could they're mature enough to understand some of those concepts, yeah, like early, like sure, but like if you're saying that the original system, obviously it's bad. I don't think anyone disagrees with that. And of course, there's traces of that today, but I just don't agree with the way that a lot of times today people are saying, yeah, this original system was so bad.
And it still rings true today.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's where I deviate from you as well.
No, listen. And that's coming from people who don't study history. They don't know about it. Because if you were to make a statement like that, that's so silly to be even worth contemplating. It's still the same today. Like, no, it is not. Please.
I'm not saying it's the same today, but you said that...
No, you're not. No, but some people, you're saying that, but some people say that.
But you're saying that the system previously still rings true today.
No, what I'm saying is it's still the structure that was built for over 3 centuries is still impacting the ways in which human beings we're living our lives today. The sociology of the system, it still is impacting.
The sociology of what left over. Like,
what's that?
Jim Crow's gone, right? We don't have slavery, none of this.
Dude.
So it's
Awesome. All right. Do you have a question? I'm gonna explain that.
Okay.
No, I don't have a question, but I do kind of want to say an answer.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So I think that we should teach our kids at a young age about this, but I think that growing up and going all through grade school and elementary school, a lot of it's all hounded on how bad it was, and yes, it was absolutely terrible. But I think that just as much as you say how bad it is, I think that there should be equal teaching as to how it's getting better.
To quickly answer your question,
yeah.
Just to quickly answer your question in regards to what we should teach, I'm all for teaching history.
Yeah.
We should teach people about slavery. We should teach people about the Japanese internment camps, all of that stuff. I'm all for textbook history. However, where we deviate is when we talked about it ringing true today. That I would not get into because I believe that's not actual history.
Okay, well here, are you ready? Okay, I got that. That's good. But here's what I would say. This is something I've been studying deeply for now 35, almost 40 years. Studying the sociology of power and economics and so on and so forth, right? I used to be much more ignorant and much more willing to just critique power and just critique whatever it is, rich people in the U.S. and foreign policy and white people and men or whatever the case is, right? But then at some point in time over the years, I started to get really much more thoughtful. I realized, you're really sounding like an idiot. So why don't you get a little more thoughtful? Why don't you actually use your sociological analysis to carefully deconstruct the world and understand the world? And they're oh, okay, why don't I do that? Why don't I start with the idea, right? Start with the idea that racism is everywhere. Now I just got to show all my students why it is everywhere. What if I just start with the idea, let's explore, let's see how much it actually exists. And then once we start there, then now we're in a different place, right? So, okay, let me walk you through a couple things, right? So in 1865, you couldn't just build a new system. You didn't just build a new system, right? You just didn't do that. It wasn't look, you got a society of people who think that people of African ancestry are closer to monkeys than to human beings. At the end of the Civil War, you don't have television, you don't have radio, you have nothing. At the end of the Civil War, what do you think? People just one day said, oh, okay, they won the war now. Lincoln has decided they're freeing the slaves, which happened a few years earlier. And I'm going to change my thinking now. That didn't happen. In fact, a system got built that in many ways was worse than the slave system. And it goes right up into 1964, which is the Civil Rights Movement. All these signs are just kind of signs that are part of Jim Crow. No coloreds, no black people, no Mexicans, no Indians, no Chinese, one thing after another, right? It's just kind of whoa, this is system of white supremacists, but it was also no Polacks, no Irish, no different white racial groups were also put down. But it's not, you don't get up until 1964 when you start breaking down all these laws, like at a federal level, which says, no, we're going to demand that you all have to start getting along. That's 1864. That's 345 years, you all, like 345 years. It's like, whoa. Like, dude, 1964, I was born in 1960, when all these walls start getting broken down. Okay, so now let me show you. This is really important. Here's net wealth in the United States. So you take all of your assets, and you subtract all your debt, and then you add up what you have left. That's your net wealth. And this is median wealth. And so this is, from the U.S. Federal Reserve. This is 2016. Look at white net wealth. It's like these are families, okay? $170,000. And then you look at black net wealth. You look at Hispanic net wealth. This is the reason that's so low, Native Americans, is because 345 years of white people, and again, don't forget, I'm not disallowing, or I'm not talking about all the different white ethnic groups that held each other down, right? Because this is really important. But 345 years of a head start.
But look how well the Asians are doing, especially after internment camps and stuff like that.
The Asians are, see, here you go. Asians are, most of the new Asian immigration coming to the United States are educated people, more educated people and people with money, just like Africans. Like if we look at Africans, by the way, remember the 20% up here? Most Africans, especially new immigrants to the United States, they're in the 20% category up here. So new Africans, like you don't come to the U.S. Most Africans coming to the U.S. are coming with money and education. Same with Asians. So that number right there, you have like a population of Asians who are really struggling, and then a population of Asians who are doing really, really well. And so they're coming with money, they're coming with education, they're coming. So that almost like, I almost have to set that aside. We'll talk about it later. But look at that.
I think it's important to note, though.
No. I know, but dude, we'll do 3 classes on Asians. But right now, that's not the one that's most salient, because you understand, like that's so complex, right? So look, what's going to happen with white people in like 30 years? What's going to happen with that white bar? It's going to increase, right? It's going to double, let's say.
So, but are you saying that that's a bad thing, that white people are getting more wealthy?
No.
Or are you trying to pose that question?
No. You're asking the most awesome question, by the way, right? It's not a bad thing, but it is a thing that is built upon other people not having the same opportunities. Because if it wasn't for the 345 years, those bars would be very similar. This is the fundamental point here, right? Okay, listen up. So we can agree that if Africans were brought here, if indigenous Americans, Native Americans were treated differently, if Latinos were treated, everything, right? Those bars would be basically the same. Are we in agreement with that? If we had a system that was based on not a race-based inequality, but it was based on fairness, and let the individuals who want to work really hard rise to the top, and those who don't, they don't rise to the top. And we would see lots of black and brown people rise to the top, and lots of white people go under, and so on. But we would see those bars would be basically the same. Are we in agreement?
I mean, I would argue that there's also a different culture at play with each of
hang on. I know, there are different cultures, but hold on. Probably less likely than you would imagine, because black people and brown people are just as capitalist in their orientation as everybody else, but I hear that. But what I'm looking at is this. Dude, $170,000 versus less than $20,000. From my perspective as a sociologist, that is, you cannot understand today, these are these numbers today, you can't understand those differences if you don't look at 345 years of a system that is built around racist, institutionalized inequality. Like you can. It doesn't mean every single piece of it. It doesn't mean this. It doesn't mean that. There were still rich black people, rich brown people. But like you cannot understand those numbers today if you don't look at 345 years. you have to also look at other things. Bro, you got to look at other things, like culture, for example. But right now, it's a long semester. There are lots of things to look at. Right now, I just want to look at this. And that's critical race theory. This is me saying, like, yeah, this stuff matters today. It still matters. Can you stand up really fast? Just look at that. Watch this, right? Can you just... So this is the ladder of upward mobility. You're at $20,000, okay? So turn toward me. Watch this. And I'm at $170,000. And now she's going to work really hard because the goal is she needs, what's your name, by the way? Janae. Yeah. So Janae, listen, right? Got it? You, Janae, represent all black people in the United States. So black people, your job is to climb the ladder of upward mobility. Work hard, pull yourself up by your boots, do whatever you got to do, but you got to go up there because you need to be equal with white people, okay? Me, I'm white people. So watch what happens. Janae's going to work really, really hard because she's going to catch up to the white people, right? Okay, so Janae, start walking. Oh, but watch what happens. But I'm walking too. She's pulling herself forward. Okay, hang on. She's working hard. She's doing what she needs to do, but so am I. Like, I'm not just sitting around waiting like, hey, you know what I mean? Janae, we had a break for 345 years, right? So why don't you all just catch up to us? No, we're going to do the same thing. So I'm doing it. And so the problem is 345 years of a so-called of policies and ideologies that said that Janae was inferior to Sam, to her people are inferior to my people. When you build a whole system around that, then what that means is that there's no way she's never going to catch up. You might as an individual, right? You're here at Penn State. But it's the whole system. All right, thanks.